Hello and welcome to Thursday Thoughts. Thursday Thoughts? What the hell are they? I hear you cry. Well, my friend Polly and I meet every week over on Instagram to talk all things personal growth because she is as obsessed with it as I am. And we decided that we might as well put those conversations out as a weekly podcast. So now you can listen to us chat here on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. And we'll be talking about topics such as spirituality, limiting beliefs, ego, imposter syndrome, gratitude, meditation, confidence, and so much more. So, if you're ready, here we go.
I like this one.
I do too.
This was yours. Come on, you start because this was
Okay.
your idea.
So the idea is also the thing that we're going to talk about today is this idea of building a life that we don't need to escape from. So just to give sort of a bit of context in my own life. So I used to be that person who, when I was working the 9 to 5 in London, for decades and working in various different jobs, blah, 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 I was that person who lived for my holidays. I lived for the weekends and I lived for my days off. I lived for the kind of, 2 weeks on holiday or whatever it was. And it was because I was constantly trying to escape my life because I wasn't feeling it in my day-to-day life. That doesn't mean I was necessarily depressed or really miserable or anything else. But I think I had this kind of I had this low level dissatisfaction, which is why I just always was living for the weekend and living for holidays. And the truth is that we spend most of our life at work, or a lot of it. That's assuming that most people listening or watching, have a job, blah, blah, blah. And so what we want to do is live a life where although it's lovely to go away on holiday, we're not living for that 2 week break. I mean, and looking at my life now in the last few years, much as it's nice to go away, I never feel anymore. I never feel like this desperate need to go away because I actually like my life. And that doesn't mean it's perfect. It couldn't be further from perfect, but I feel like I'm doing something that is meaningful to me. I feel like I'm on the right path, and it's really hard and I get really overwhelmed and I have days where I feel really anxious and worried and all the rest of it. But as a whole, I know I'm on the right path. So I think it's worth asking ourselves, am I living my life waiting for the weekend or waiting for that week off that I have, or that, but we've just had a bank holiday. How many people were like waiting for that bank holiday to arrive so they could escape their life, or, for those 3 days, get out of that job that they're not particularly happy in. And I think this kind of speaks to something that you and I have talked about before, which is essentially starting to live with intention and having an idea, having a clear vision. And you don't have to know exactly what you want to do. You don't have to know exactly where you're going. But if you don't have some vision of where you want to go and how you want your days to look and how you want to live your life and how you want to feel every day and what you want your actual days to look like, if you don't have a vision of that and you're just being swept along, then it just basically means that life is just creating your world for you. Like you are not being intentional about the life that you want to live, and you're just being swept along by the tide of life. And that's not how we want to live. And it doesn't have to be how we live either. We can get intentional and we can create a life that we don't feel this need to escape from. So that's kind of where that's where this comes from.
Yeah, yeah. And I too have very much been in that place where I've just literally just craved weekends, craved holidays. And I'm thinking about particularly a time in my life when that was the case, and that was when my kids were very small. I was working, well, even actually when I was sort of working part time, but I had no time or space for myself because I had a family, and I just was needing just something different, some space for myself. And I accept it can be incredibly difficult to get what you need. You know, if some people just don't have that, it's very, very difficult to kind of get it, if because you're kind of like, you know, you're in it. So I think, you know, it's very easy to say for us to say, oh, well, you just got to create, you know, this life that you want, and that's what it's about. But and it can be difficult. So really what you have to do is cultivate the mindset and the space, even when chaos might be happening around you, or you're stuck in a job that you really don't like, although we can obviously become intentional about trying to change that. But it's about creating some sort of space and mindset in your mind that you, where you get that sense of peace, of presence, or a feeling of purpose, rather than constantly battling against it in your mind, going, this is shit, I hate this. And then we want to just escape, escape, escape. And that's often when we start to do the numbing out, the drinking too much. I mean, you know, this is me. Don't, you know, I'm just saying this is exactly how I was, drinking too much, doing all the things to try and escape from life, um, desperate for the holidays. So I think, and that is when we become really, really disconnected from our bodies as well. We're disconnected from ourselves as well. We just want something outside of ourselves.
Mm.
But actually, I think a big part of this is almost accepting the situation you are in currently now, whatever that might be, however hard that might be, however difficult it might feel to get out of, and carve out some space for you to find some presence, to go inwards, to kind of really look at the mindset and the glasses that you are looking at your life through. So if you're constantly saying to yourself, and this was me, so when I'm just thinking about that time, particularly when I was really felt like I had no moment for myself. I was doing everything for everybody else. I was angry. I was bitter because of that. And actually, if I had then managed to flip it and really just try to find those little moments of joy, of like, my gosh, look, I get to do this. It's almost like, you know, it's like, and try and just carve out little moments to myself to really see it, reframe those difficult bits,
Mm.
and just reset my mindset really. It would have been so much more joyful.
Mm.
Everyone would have been happier. But yeah, so it's kind of like a choice of how you see it, and if you can carve out some moments for yourself at some point in the day to rebuild that relationship you have with yourself, to build that connection with yourself, to find your moments of peace, of presence,
Mm.
that is really going to help you just find the joy in the moments which otherwise kind of can just fly by and you don't even notice them.
Yeah.
Have I made any sense then,
Yeah, no,
Seva?
no, completely. And I mean, ultimately, everything boils down to the lens through which you're looking.
Yeah,
It really
yeah.
is the truth, whether we want to hear it or not. And frankly, sometimes we don't want to fucking hear it. If we're not there, we're just like, oh my God, shut up. You don't understand. This is a classic, I think, because I used to do this. I know, because I used to be that girl going, you don't understand. It's different for me. You know, my life's really difficult because of this, and
Hmm.
this. But again, that is the lens that I used to be looking at life through. And it was very limiting. And I think in the world as it is today, with all of the stuff that is going on in the world, I think there is a real tendency for people to be thinking like, well, the world's fucked, it's going to hell in a handbasket, how the hell can I change my life? Da, 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 da. And what we want to do is shift our focus off of all the crap that is going on in the world, because that is happening. So either, and this is, Polly, this is something we've talked about before, but it's something that I am so obsessive about because I understand and I know from my own experience how much of a difference it makes when you are focusing on all the crap, when you are focusing on the latest terrifying news story, or what is going on in politics in the States or in this country or wherever, or whatever is happening, when you're choosing to focus on those things, you are going to feel like shit, and you are going to feel like, I can't change anything. I can't change my life. This is just the way it is. Things are really difficult. Look at the state of the world. No, there are plenty of people in the world right now living beautiful, amazing lives that they love.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be like that. But we have to make the choice to pull our attention away from the things that make us feel bad, which we all have a tendency to do. Humans have a tendency to do. But we have to take control over what we're focusing on and what we're putting our attention on, because it truly is everything. And just going back to one thing that you said, Polly, you know, I mean, obviously we speak to very different audiences. I speak to single women without kids. You speak to, you know, probably mostly married women with kids. And I do get that it's very, very different. And you said, yes, it can be really difficult and all the rest of it to start creating a life you love. But the truth is that nobody said it was easy. Nobody said changing your life was easy, and it's not. The question is, how badly do you want it? How badly do you want your life to be better? Because you've got to start with that. You've got to start with asking yourself, why do I want to change and how much do I want this? Because it's very easy to do that numbing thing, as you and I both know only too well. It's very easy just to go, fuck it, do you know what? I just don't have the energy to work on that side hustle. I just don't have the energy to do that. I don't have the energy to get up early and do my meditation that I know is going to make me feel better. The first thing I would say is, because, you know, I think even when you have, look, I don't have kids. So I'm very, very wary of, you know, your followers or your listeners feeling potentially triggered by this. But I think, you know, I have plenty of friends who do have kids. I have a sister who has 4 kids, including triplets. I have a brother who has a baby. So I do know a little bit about what it's like. And I think even when you are in that really difficult situation, you can still find 30 minutes in a day, even if it means getting up half an hour early. But people often don't want to hear. I think people, they don't want, you know, and that's myself included, sometimes we don't want to hear it. We don't want to hear it, and we get really defensive and we get really triggered when someone says, well, how much time are you spending on social media? Yes, I know you're really busy with your kids, but how many hours a day are you spending scrolling on Instagram? Or how, you know, how many episodes of Netflix are you watching every evening? So I think all of us have the ability to carve out 30 minutes, because that's actually all you need in a day, to do something that is good for you and is going to make you feel better and is potentially going to start moving you towards the life that you actually want for yourself. And it just takes getting a little bit intentional, and you don't have to have massive grand plans. It really is just a question of taking, as we talked about before, those tiny little baby steps consistently, day after day. And in a year's time, you're like, holy shit, look what I did, you know, whatever it is. So again, yeah, nobody is saying this is easy. It's not. You know, my journey over the last 4 years has not been easy at all. It's been really bloody hard. And it still is regularly, but it's driven by my why, and it's driven by me knowing the life that I am working towards living. And that, when that becomes your primary motivation, then you can find those little pockets of time in the day, even if it just means doing a 15-minute meditation that is going to, you know, get you out of your sympathetic nervous system and bring you back into your parasympathetic nervous system, so at least you feel a bit better. And of course, going back to what you were saying, it's so much of this comes down to, you know, you can start by working on your mindset and working on the way that you see the world and the way that you see life. Because incredibly, when you start seeing life through a different lens, life starts looking very, very different. You know, it starts, you suddenly start seeing things, because ultimately, you know, what I was saying just now about how, despite the fact that we're living in these terrifying times, you know, what I was saying earlier about how there are many, many, many people living wonderful lives. And that's not because they're privileged necessarily. That's because they got intentional about their life. And yes, there is lots of shit going on in the world, but we can still live our own beautiful life over here without focusing all of our attention over there, you know?
a very quick break to ask you to hit the follow or subscribe button if you haven't already. And if you're enjoying this episode, I'd be super grateful if you could hit those stars and rate it too. Thank you.
Yeah, it's kind of, ultimately we're all craving kind of a sense of peace,
Yeah.
a sense of just being present, having a sense of purpose. That's what we're all ultimately
Yeah.
craving. So it's up to us how we cultivate that. And
Yeah.
yes, you can constantly look at other people and moan about them and blame them for the way that you're living, how it's affecting you. But actually, you don't need to, it really is a choice. And it's kind of, yeah, I find it's very frustrating when you're constantly hearing about people moaning about everything that is going on. And it's fine to have discussions about things, but it's when it's really affecting how
Yeah.
you're
Exactly.
living your life and making you feel anxious or depressed or whatever it is. And I think ultimately we all have a responsibility to regulate our own nervous systems. When you can just constantly be, and I think this is the problem in our hustle kind of world, where busyness is always kind of seen as something to be rewarded.
Mm.
But actually, when you can take responsibility for your own nervous system and you can kind of bring down your stress state and you can come at life from a much more regulated state, then that's the ripples of that are immense. And if everybody could be responsible for themselves in
Yeah.
that sense, can you imagine how
Yeah.
amazing the things would be? But the problem is everyone is starting their days in such a hyper aroused state that just kind of like chasing, and that's where the hustle starts, and everyone's working harder, feel that they've got to do more. And I think that's where literally everyone is exhausted
Yeah.
all of the time, and that is obviously where you just craving for a holiday because that you're being pushed harder by the people who are you're working for, whatever. So it really is, I just really believe it's our own personal responsibility to start your day from a place of calmness, of a
Yeah.
regulated state, and we can all do that. That can be 10 minutes sitting on a train, just literally calming down your nervous system, doing some breathing, doing some meditation, going inwards. And I really do believe that is our responsibility.
Yeah.
That is, and for those of us who have who understand that, then I think it's easier to see the world from a lens of, okay, it's everything is much more joyful, and then you can get to see when you're coming at it from a regulated state, you see you're slow enough and calm enough that you can actually see the joyful moments, and
Yeah.
you carve out those
Yeah.
joyful moments for yourself, and then that it's almost like a upward kind of spiral of
Yeah.
like, oh gosh, isn't life wonderful? And you can see all those good little moments. And don't get me wrong, I'm not always like this, but if you're constantly coming at life from a state of chronic stress, you are constantly chasing your tail, you are constantly exhausted, you don't see those moments of joy because they just pass you by. And that is when you are literally numbing because because you just need, it's a way to kind of,
Mm.
your nervous system needs to find a way to reset, otherwise you're just going to spiral out of control. And the holidays are more and more important. So
Yeah.
for me, I think that is the real crux. It's like, what are you doing to calm yourself, start your day from a peaceful place? And it looks different from everyone. For some
Mm.
people, it might be yoga. Exercise is a really big part for me.
Yeah.
Getting rid of that stress. Breath work, meditation, going for a beautiful walk. I mean, I do a lot of those things because that's what I have learned I have
Same.
needed. And it's about carving out time and space for the things which work for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
And however busy you are, even if it's 5 minutes here or there is space to do it. And it's about trying to fit it into your day somehow.
Totally. Just going back to what you were saying about how we all have a responsibility to kind of regulate our nervous system, because and it's so true, because also going back to the state of the world and how we're all really stressed about it and all the rest of it, well actually, you know the only thing that is going to create a better world is for more people to be feeling good about themselves. That's literally it. If more people felt good about themselves, we wouldn't have half of the shite that is happening in the world. I truly believe that, and it might sound like a simplification, but that's what I believe. It's that amazing quote. I think we did a whole episode about this. One of my favorite quotes. I can never bloody remember who it's by, but it's, don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do that, because what the world needs is people who have come alive. And it's so true. If everybody on the planet went inwards and focused on what made them feel good, and focused on cultivating joy, and focused on cultivating a more positive mindset, and did these practices every morning so that they started off their day feeling better, they felt more whole within themselves, because that's what we're all chasing. We're all chasing a feeling of wholeness. If more people did that, there wouldn't be so much shit happening in the world. So you're absolutely right to say that we do all have a responsibility. And this kind of speaks to the sort of victim mentality, where we're also good at blaming everyone else. It's like, well, it's their fault, or that thing's fault, or it's the fault of this, or the fault of the government, or the fault of blah, 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 whatever. We've got to take some personal responsibility. And actually, the irony is that in this crazy world, by making ourselves happier, we're not only helping ourselves, but we're also helping the world around us. And because when people also, you're kind of giving other people permission to do the same for themselves. And like you said, it's not like either of us are wandering around feeling bloody amazing all the time. Not at all. I've actually had a couple of feeling really low the last couple of weeks, not for any particular reason, but I've been feeling, my mood has been really low for no particular reason. I feel better this week, actually, but that happens to all of us, no matter how positive your mindset is or what. But it's just when like you say, when you regulate your nervous system, it just enables you to cope so much better with those tiny little things that happen every single day, that you can either allow to piss you off and make you just like, I'm so annoyed at that person. You can either allow that, or you can regulate your nervous system and therefore have the ability to not hold on to the things that really don't fucking matter, and instead focus on, hang on a minute, I'm going to stop obsessing about this stupid thing that happened this morning in the supermarket queue, and instead I'm going to start focusing on, what am I going to do today that is going to take me one step further towards the life that I really want? Let me just think about, whilst I'm standing in this queue feeling really irritated, why don't I, instead of feeling irritated, why don't I stand here and have a bit of a daydream about what I want for my life and what I want it to look like, and start coming up with a bit of a plan. And it's not about taking massive steps. It really is just getting a little bit intentional. And that starts with, again, going back to what I was saying at the beginning, if we're not intentionally creating a life that we don't want to escape from, then we are always going to be tossed around by the waves of life that we're not in control of. We're going to end up doing that. We're going to end up in that job. We're going to end up in that whatever. We're going to end up doing all of these things rather than intentionally deciding on what we're going to do and where we're going to be and what job we're going to do and all the rest of it.
Yeah. And also, I think it is about also allowing yourself to do the things that, we've talked about this as well, do the things that really truly light you up.
Yeah.
And just and kind of putting more importance on those things.
Yeah.
And actually carving out the time and doing them. So, as we say, even if it is at the weekend, but just doing those things that light up your soul, and not pushing them to the bottom of the list and thinking we don't have time for, actually making them a priority, because that's what makes us feel, we're here to have, we're not here just to kind of pay the bills and then die. We're actually here to create, to live our lives to the fullest, to have really meaningful relationships. So I think it's really important to remember that, how much do we
Mhm.
actually need? Okay, yes, we all want to have as much stuff, we want to live comfortable lives, but really ultimately, when is enough, and how, I don't know, we just need to, yeah, really appreciate and be grateful for the small things which we do have, and rather, and get out of that constant mentality of just needing more, 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 more. And gratitude is, as we know, is one of those great things that it just constantly brings you back to the present, to the now, to what we have. And I don't say that lightly, because I know that I'm coming at it from a place of real privilege. My life is I I live this great life. So, but I think that however you're living, you can still come back to, if you get to have your next meal, if you get to, I don't know, do whatever it is, there's sun, go outside, have a walk, feel the sun on your face. We can all be grateful for
Mm.
what we have. And I think those little moments of joy kind of bring you back to that state of presence. I think it's about, really coming back to that present moment.
Yeah.
Stop worrying about the future. Stop worrying, about what's happened, and just come back to this present moment. And then that is where we can find real joy and peace. And the more we can do that throughout every single day, the more we're going to just feel like, oh, this is good. Life is all
Yeah.
right. I don't need to escape from my life or run away.
Mm.
So yeah.
We forget, you're so right. I totally agree with you. And, we forget that literally all we have is this present moment. Like it's literally all we have. We're
Yeah.
constantly thinking, oh fuck, what I did yesterday, or what did I say 3 weeks ago to that guy, or or worrying about what's going to happen in the future, or blah 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 blah. But actually, the way that the way that I try and encourage people, people who listen to my podcast, people in my membership, I encourage people to, we've got to be joyful in the present with what we have now, and excited about what's coming.
Mm,
That's the kind of sweet combination. It's like being grateful for what you have now, and being happy with the life you have now, even if it's not where you
yeah.
necessarily want to be forever. It's making peace with, and
Yeah.
finding joy in the life that you have now, in those present moments, while at the same time feeling excitement
Yeah.
for the future, not feeling like, oh, I'm never going to get there, or oh god, it's not fair because I'm not blah 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 blah. No, we have to feel this sort of just quiet excitement for where we're going, and grateful for where we are. And like you say, it's always like you come back to gratitude, and it fucking works. And it works, science, like, please go and look up studies on gratitude.
Yeah.
It's literally, if we are not intentionally practicing gratitude every day, we are missing a goddamn trick, because there are hundreds of studies on gratitude, all of the mental health benefits, the physical health benefits, the spiritual health benefits. It's just huge. Read a book called, we did this in my book club, there's a book called The Magic by Rhonda Byrne, who's the same person who wrote The Secret. But it's a 28-day gratitude practice, and it's brilliant. And you read a chapter a day, and you do a different gratitude practice every day, and it just gets you into the vibe of gratitude. I highly recommend it. And it's a bit cringe, and you're like, if you're really cynical, like I certainly used to be and still can be, it's just like, oh, for fuck's sake. But actually, sometimes you've got to
Yeah.
let go of that cynical side of you and go, do you know
Yeah.
what? If I want to change my life, I've got to open up to these things, and I can't keep being like rolling my eyes at every personal growth book or every person who talks about gratitude. If if you're going to be that person who just keeps rolling your eyes when people talk about being grateful, then good luck.
Yeah.
And that
And
used to be me. That used to be me,
yeah.
100%.
I think a really easy way to do it is just when you wake up in the morning, you can just literally be grateful for waking up in your warm, cozy bed, and, and oh, it's a new day. And then at the end of the day, that's when I find it easiest. I'm lying in bed, and I'll just kind of do three things I'm really grateful
Yeah,
for that day.
yeah,
And that's it. And it's simple, it's easy, it's done, but it makes you wake up and go to sleep in a really nice place, which makes you
yeah,
feel good, and kind of gets rid of all of those, it can really get you out of the worries and the doubts before you go to sleep and before you start your day. So I really like that.
Totally. I also love the thing where I do it when I lie down and go to, turn my light out. I will consciously think about something exciting that I'm kind of manifesting for the future, and I think so many of us lie in bed and we're worrying about this or we're stressing about this, but don't do that. Just shift your focus and think about something that you desire in the future. Think about something that you're excited about, something that you want, but think about it in an excited way.
Yeah.
Visualize it. And it's such a great way to go to sleep, not least because it means that you're kind of embedding it into your subconscious. That's the thought that you're having as you drift off to sleep, rather than, and that does impact, what your subconscious is going to do during the night. It really does.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
We've got a minute over.
We are done. Thank you, everybody who has listened, watched. Oh my goodness, I really am losing my voice this morning. I know. Yeah, well, we'll see you next Monday. For more Monday motivation.
Have a good day.
All right. Yeah, you too. Bye. Bye.